I am generally pretty cautious when it comes to online dating. Chat until comfortable, meet in public, and have friends knowledgeable my whereabouts for the first meet, just in case, all that jazz. The days were usually pretty fun, or does, but I've never had an issue and never been fearful. I have, in fact, made some really great friends. Others I just don't hear from again. No harm, no fuss, and simple. Recently, I met this guy online through POF. I talked quite a bit through the app, and then often for hours on the phone. He seemed like a great dude, so we decided to meet. He lives about 45 minutes away, a town do not visit often, at all, so I'm very unfamiliar with it. There was a talk about me staying there, and we decided to grab some drinks. I thought maybe I'd just get a room for myself as to not stay at his place off the bat. I don't know why, but a lot of unusual judgment just kind of flew out the window at some point because we left my car near a park. I had no idea how to get back to it from this place, if I needed to, because he took so many twists and turns on the drive where I was. Oh yeah, he suggested I crawl in the back of his van because it's a small town and he doesn't want anyone to see me. Why didn't I just turn around and walk back to my car right then? He also took my phone to lock in a box to hide his location. I know, I should have seen the red flag. Like I said, I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I thought I based all our conversations that this may be part of a silly, what he thought was be some sort of game. He even kind of presented as such when I talked to him before I left town. We finally arrived at his home and hung out, watched movies, and talked. It was pretty normal. We had some dinner, and at some point, he begins kind of acting off, asking a lot of questions in a kind of intimidating tone, making me feel a little dumb, dissecting everything I'd say, constantly pacing, chain smoking. He was intense overall. I began to feel a little uncomfortable, even mentioned suggesting he would drive me back to my car and we will call it a night so I could go home. He refused. He thought I was joking, said if I wanted to leave, I could call a cab. I could not afford to allow the meter to run while I try to figure out where to tell the driver to fund my car. At this point, I do have my phone back and had messaged a friend to keep an on-hand case of 911 come get me situation. I know how to get my car from a certain point if she could get me. Things settled though. We felt a bit more comfortable. Okay, well I was just going to sleep now. Get the night over with and get back to my car in the morning. And that's what eventually happens, and I make it home safe. Even after that, we keep talking at least. Phone calls, text, and we both agree it was an intention awkward. He apologized, so we tried to hang out again. It was actually loads better. I felt comfortable and lots of laughs. It was good, actually. I willingly say the night this time, rather than feeling trapped. He offered to grab my pillow from my bag for me. When he went to the other room, when he did, my makeup bag had fallen out. This was actually relevant, and he returned it to the place and let me know. Okay, I fell asleep talking. He drove me to my car the next morning. We didn't talk much the rest of the day. I was pretty busy being a bridesmaid and doing things of last lines. Well, he texts me in the evening, and I tell him I'd call him later if he'd like, as I was busy. I didn't get a response, so I texted him when I was free to see if he was awake and still want to do that. This was around 2 a.m., non-abnormal time for us at all. This is where he first goes off on me, asking me what kind of script I have prepared for him and what I actually want from him. Okay, what script? I tell him that, as we already discussed and agreed upon, I like to start his friends while we get to know each other. He then tells me I'm stupid out of town or for toting around a makeup bag as a facade and some kind of smoke screen. He said it was sloppy of me and the fact that I'd call later was some kind of red flag, though he knew I had things to do. All I kept thinking was, what? It was easy for me just to leave it all behind. A week later, though, I get a voicemail demanding a call right away. I was at work and my building has bad reception and I saw no missed call notification. Just a new voicemail, so I had no idea who left it. I went back to listen to it again after an hour or so. I could check the number that left it and the message was gone. I know I saved it, even checked erase messages, and it wasn't there. Well, I assume it was him because the same thing happened with a message he left the following night. He says some heinous things, just awful things. He said things along the lines of, "Listen, you stupid fucking cunt. You want to come in here with your fucking makeup bag full of fucking gels and stupid shits, trying to collect evidence at my place so that you can fucking put people in cages and torture them like a dumb fucking cunt. You want to tell me about your good fucking person. Fuck the fuck off, you stupid fucking whore. Run and hide. Like I said, you deserve to be hiding. Enjoy the prison that you put yourself in by being a dumb cunt and fucking enjoy it. Hide. And don't fucking lie that you're going to be sleeping in the fucking bed next time, where you're going to be doing some fucking detective work. I gotta fucking slap you in the mouth." So far, that's the last I've heard as of Sunday morning. Thankfully, he knows a little personal info of mine. He doesn't know where I live. This kind of thing has never happened to me before, and I'm not sure how to respond. When I saw my first shadow person, I was 7, and if my cousin Adrian hadn't witnessed to himself, I don't think anyone would have believed me. I lived out on a ranch, and my cousin lived just down the country road, and we often spent the night at each other's houses. Since we lived far out of town, our school friends really couldn't visit. He and I were always great together. Well, one Friday night, he stayed over. We had made a plan to get up super early for Saturday morning cartoons. At the time, we lived in a single-wide trailer home. It was 2 bedrooms, so I shared a room with my older brother and my older sister. My sister and I have bunk beds, and my brother had his own. The room was a stray shot down the hallway at the end of the trailer. The way the bunks were set, when the door was open, you could see the living room couch in the other hand of the hall, and where the breakfast bar that divided the kitchen was. That night, we slept on the bottom bunk, which was in my bed. My sister had top. Well, we had gotten up early, as planned, and we were going to binge on Frosted Flakes and cartoons, only we had waking up too early. Where I lived, they started at 6 a.m. Well, the good ones did anyway. Upon figuring this out, we decided just to lay there. We joke around laughing and try not to wake up any of the teenagers. When we turned on our stomach to see what time it was on the kitchen wall clock, there it was. It was a tall, dark figure. It looked like a man. We knew it wasn't my parents, and we clearly would have known if they have gotten up. Where it was standing, it was behind the bar. It was near our kitchen sink, and to me, it looked as if it was going through our dishes. I couldn't physically see him picking them up. I just kind of knew. It looked at them almost curiously, and then he set them down. Now, this all happened in less than a minute. But you know how time almost slows down when weird stuff happens? A dream whispers to me, "Do you see that, do you?" "What the heck is it?" "I don't know," I whisper back. And it's like it hurt us, because as soon as I let those words out, I think stopped what it was doing and looked at us. He had no face. I mean, he was just a shadow. But I could see and sense his surprise. He stared at us and we stared at him. We just stared each other down at the hallway. Then he just suddenly ducks down and disappears, almost as if we scared him. We stay there in shock, trying to process what we just saw. We finally wake up the courage to get up and check the kitchen after a long round of know you first back and forth. When we walk down the hall, huddle close together, and make our way to the kitchen where it stood, there was nothing there. To this day, you can't put my cousin and I in a separate room, and he'll tell you the same story. The only difference is when he looked at it, he saw red eyes, and I didn't. When I was 14 years old, my grandma was diagnosed with cancer. It was supposed to be very treatable, and during the treatment process, she became extremely sick. I think her immune system was shot, and whatever virus she got killed her. By her last days here on Earth, she was on life support. Her lungs filled with fluid, and she was experiencing organ failure. She was young for what was going on, mid-50s. My dad, uncle, and grandfather all decided it was time to take her off life support, and she passed shortly after. The real story of why I'm writing this happened at our funeral. During the service, The priest told everyone that if they had any kind words to say about my grandma, to come up if they feel comfortable. There had to be about 10 people that went up at least, my dad's uncle, so I believe my great-uncle went up to speak. This is where things took a turn. He started telling a story about my grandma from the week before, when she was still alive. He went on to say that she had given him a call in the middle of the night. My grandma had a vivid dream that my uncle had a heart attack and was rushed to the emergency room. But during this time, he passed away. They couldn't save him. She said it was so real, and she was certain waking up, something was wrong. He said he was all right, but was happy she called Squood because he had a similar dream where he saw an angel that came to him to tell him everything will be okay. But the angel never said why she was there. My great-uncle went on to say that my grandma was always caring, always looking out for him, and always made sure he was doing well. After he was done talking, he walked off the altar section and went up to my family sitting in the front row. He hugged my grandpa, my uncle, and went up to my dad to hug him. I was looking over and thought it was weird that he was hugging my dad for so long. And then I realized he was falling over. My dad was holding him up. He was having a massive heart attack. We called 911 and the ambulance was there almost immediately. They performed CPR on him, but it was too late. In my honest opinion, he died immediately, right there in the church, after telling us all the story of the phone call between himself and my grandma, and died the way he did in my grandma's dream. My great-uncle was known to be pretty healthy, never had any heart conditions or anything that would imply a heart attack in his future. I still think to this day that both of their dreams combined was a vision. One dream foreshadowing my great-uncle's death, the other about an angel that was supposed to be my grandma, coming to bring my uncle to the afterlife with her. I was the least imaginative kid in the world. I hated playing with dolls or pretending games because I couldn't see anything other than what was actually in front of me. I've also never had an imaginary friend, despite being one of the shyest kids you've ever seen. Anyways, my mom's parents used to live in a small town in Alabama, a town that we lived in twice. Military family, we moved a lot, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to sleep there when we visited. My grandparents only had 2 rooms for guests to sleep in. One was actually a screened and poured shoutback that they put in carpeting in a bed and a TV. The other was a room at the front of the house facing the streets. Typically, 2 older brothers would take the back room, and my mom and I would take the front. The front room was really small and had a full bed, 2 chairs, and a dresser. The bed and one of the chairs were on either side of the window that showed you the front yard in the street beyond. The other chair and the dresser were on the opposite wall, next to the door. I promise all this detail was a purpose. On one of our visits, all 4 of us came, and we took our usual sleeping arrangements. I was a very young guy at the time, probably 4 or 5, so my mom and I slept in the full bed together. I was sleeping between the wall and her, and she took the edge. Now, I've been a night owl all my life, and it never fell asleep easily, and that night was no difference. I was wide awake, tossing and turning when a car drove by, and the lights came through the window. I was facing the chairs, wide awake, tossing and turning, when a car drove by and the lights came through the window. I was facing the chairs, and when the headlights in the chair hit the chair near the dresser, I saw a creature sort of shift up and turn to look at me. I can only describe this thing as the offspring of Golem in a gargoyle. It was small, but the size of a medium-sized dog, but it was squatting on the chair, so it could have been bigger. Its arms were pulled into its body like you'd imagine a Disney witch when she's rubbing her hands together, making an evil plan. It said something to me, but it's been over a decade and a half at least, so I can't really remember. I don't remember if I spoke English. Obviously, I was terrified. I must have blinked because it disappeared in an instant. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I told my mom about the next day, and she brushed it off by saying I must have been tired and saw the print of the chair or something. Now, I don't feel too strongly one way or another about the paranormal. I think ghost demons, monsters, or whatever could be real. That doesn't mean that they are. But I have absolutely no explanation for what that thing was. I live with one other girl, and our home is not one I would traditionally consider to be thought to have had a presence, if that means anything at all. I'm really looking for people's opinions, as I've never been particularly aware of the paranormal or had reason to take it serious. It started around Christmas time when my housemate asked me if I had been in the loft, as a door to it had been left open. Now, I can't even reach the loft without help from a ladder and a person because I'm very short. I had noticed it seemed to have moved, but figured she must have just not closed it properly when we got the Christmas decorations down. Then, another night, we were sat in the front room, and a bottle just fell off the table across the room from us. There was no window open, no draughts, nothing. My housemate is away quite a lot, and one night, when she was away, it sounded like someone was in the kitchen. I was up in my room, and I felt like I could hear people moving. Not footsteps per se, and well, just a presence. I smoke weed, so I put it down to paranoia and living in a very cramped terrace, in a rough area, with lots of noise. I also went to the bathroom twice that night, in the toilet flushed itself on two separate occasions. This never happened before to me or my housemate, but this kept happening and getting more and more intense. The most intense was one day, when I was off sick with panic attacks. I'd been given diazepam, and was exhausted from lack of sleep over several nights. I kept waking up and just not knowing that there was someone else in the house. Something was moving around, going up and down the stairs and in the back room. I checked the house. I was so frightened, I took a knife with me, and I put it down to just being whacked out on meds and exhaustion. But I told my housemate. She said she had similar experiences when I had been away, and she had noticed she couldn't find things despite being certain where she left them. We talked and figured that even if there was a presence, it's clearly not threatening or trying to harm us. At least, so we hope, it hasn't disturbed our sleep. Not that I've noticed anyway. I could possibly consider some changes in my psychology since living here, but I don't know if I would go as far to blame the house. Do you think there's something paranormal going on in my home? And if so, am I right to be worried? As I said, I'm not particularly spiritual, nor do I know too much about the paranormal. About 6 years ago, we moved into the house we currently live in. My two oldest children were visiting their biological father, states away in Georgia, while we unpacked and prepared to settle in Missouri. I was 7 months pregnant with my youngest child, and we had 4-year-old daughter. I've noticed that when I've been pregnant, my dreams, rather nightmares, are vivid and disturbing. This was one of those milder dreams. But damn, was it strange and just disturbing to me. In my dream, my daughter Gabrielle was standing in the doorway of my and my husband's bedroom. She was telling me how she didn't want to go to bed. This was new. We went back and forth about why she didn't want to go to bed and that she needed to go to bed. I thought, maybe it was just a new house, and her older sister isn't here to share the room within this new house, so maybe she was just nervous. I picked up a vibe that she was too scared to go to bed, but somehow I convinced her that everything was fine and that she would be okay. Our discussion and my attempt at convincing her to go to bed only lasted about a minute and ended with her slowly turning around, upset and hesitant, as soon as she turned around. I noticed a freakishly large, tall black figure standing behind her, as if it were behind her the whole time she was telling me that she did not want to go to bed. When I say tall, I mean maybe 7 feet tall or more, a slender black figure with no features. The moment I notice this thing, I smell an overpowering odor. It smelled like eggs, rotten eggs and sulfur. I jumped to follow my daughter, but when I woke up, I was disturbed. It felt so real, and that smell was just so real. I didn't know people could actually smell in their dreams. I had never done that before nor since. I'm a cancer survivor, and for weeks at a time I was so weak I couldn't leave my bedroom. But my husband was a doll, and before leaving for work at 6 a.m., he will pull up a hospital tray/table and fill it with my water bottle, pain pills, phone, etc., to make sure I had everything I needed before my home health care of nurse arrived at 9 a.m. One day, I forgot to tell him to bring me my new magazines before he left, so I was laying in bed wishing that I had the energy to get up and go get them myself. I could clearly see them in the living room, just out of reach. Bored, I decided to take pictures of my living room. I had a nice room with a china cabinet full of my pretties. You could see it from my bedroom door, so I grabbed my cell phone and snapped a shot. Looking at the picture, I noticed a hazy gray smoke, like fog, close to the floor, coming out the dining room doorway into the living room. I looked up really quick, just in case it really was smoke, but I hadn't noticed it until I took the picture, or maybe it was just a smudge of my lens. I looked, the living room was empty. The fog was only visible in my camera's picture. To double check, I took another, and there it was, but nothing in the naked eye. I took another picture, and looking at that picture, I noticed the fog had moved. It was further into the living room now. So I snapped another and looked, and sure enough, the fog was now into the living room closer to my doorway. I snapped another and looked at the fog, and it moved right up to my doorway, ready to cross the threshold. Then, it wouldn't be only but a couple of feet away from me. I quickly took another picture, and the fog was at the foot of my bed, almost in my bed, but I gotten bigger, in the size of a human body shaped like a female. I knew instantly it was something evil, because my room dropped in temperature, and I got a sickening nausea feeling in my stomach, so I quickly prayed out loud, against it, and with my eyes closed. When I opened them and took another picture, it was gone. I never figured out what it was. It was the first time I've ever seen anything or even felt anything like that. I've never seen nor had an experience like that again, though. It was just so strange, and it started out as a shapeless, foggy fog, invisible to the naked eye, and only in the camera did it become visible to me. Has anyone else ever had something appear to them only on film? I was on the app Whisper, or you can post anonymous confessions, or whatever you want. I posted something about my school and how annoying this one assignment was that I had to do. After an hour or so, I get a message from someone around 9 miles away, asking if I wanted to make $100. I'm ready for this to be someone asking me for some kind of sexual favor or something, but this person just wants old bed sheets. I say no, I'm not interested, but they keep persisting on getting sheets, clothes, and etc. I finally agree to maybe giving them a shirt or something, but the whole thing is just funny to me. I can tell my friends and my dad didn't really want to deal with it. They thought it was sketchy. My friend agrees to bring bed sheets to the person with me, who is offering $100 just for some clothes and bed sheets. It's too good to be sounding true, so we're moving in numbers. I ask their intended purpose of wanting the items, and they say they want to cuddle with them. I'm a little weirded out, but really want the cash. I tell them to meet me at Walgreens because I go there on the way to school every morning. They agree. I told them I leave it in a tree somewhere, as I couldn't wait there as I had to get to school. They end up asking for a picture of me, but I'm not that idiotic. I describe myself using a description that doesn't fit me at all, just in case they want to pull something. Then they ask about my friends and if they know about this, and if they should bring some of their stuff as well. That was even weirder. I tell my friends who want to give the bed sheets that I'm not sure if we should go through with this, and she thinks it's too good to be true as well. I end up telling that person that I feel like this is sketchy, and I don't know if I should do this. They seem really frantic and desperate. They offer me $215 for the stuff, and I tell my friend that we could really use the money, and she agrees, but tells me I should ask for proof that they have the money. I ask them for proof, but the money is on their card apparently, and they need to use an ATM. Just a bit of backstory before I get started. My mom had just been posted to Winnipeg, Manitoba. We got a house in a small town about 45 minutes east from the city. I've been sensitive to energies and spirits for as long as I can remember. I can make a limited communication with the spirits, but not as well as I could when I was a kid. But I digress. So the first thing that really happened was my sister. She said that she had seen a face in my parents' room, and we, of course, didn't believe her at all. The first real experience I had was during a thunderstorm. I had gotten up to use the washroom. After I had washed up and gone to head back to bed, I opened to the bathroom door directly across from my room. And there was a man standing in my doorway, in a suit with his face blacked out, like it was black mist covering his face. I got the silhouette of the man because I'm going to digest again here. It was super cliche. The lightning flashed outside, and that's when I saw him standing there. So I screamed, slammed the door, and hid in the washroom for a good 10 minutes. I peeked out and saw it as clear as the evening during the flashes. It ran hid under my blankets. After that experience, I was really scared, and I started noticing more activity. I kind of took me off guard because I was seeing these shadows darting back and forth over my closet. It's actually why almost 18 years later, I still cannot sleep with the closet open. I heard my name called a lot, and I always hated being in the basement. It almost felt like there was something darker down there. The cats always booking it up the stairs and hissing. My siblings and I would always take the time, at least once a week, to talk about what we heard and all the weird paranormal stuff that would happen. So we were sitting at the dining room table, talking, when we all turned and looked into the kitchen. As we all turned our heads, we saw a stack of red cups fly out of the cupboard. Now, before anyone asked, it was the force of someone shoving it. If it fell out, it would have had to hit the counter, but it flew out of the cupboard and hit our dog. It didn't hurt, unfortunately, just spooked him. I remember a big, bright flash of light in our laundry room. The room was dark, and then all of a sudden it was completely light. So I assumed that the light had somehow turned on and blew up. I was about 8 or so. I went in to check to see what it was, but the light turned on fine, and it wasn't that bright. I had also seen an orb closer to when we were going to move. It just listed lazily in the spare room. As this only really covers until 2008, if people would like to hear more, I can always write it out. My mom had just been posted to Winnipeg, Manitoba. We got a house in a small town about 45 minutes east from the city. I've been sensitive to energies and spirits for as long as I can remember. I can make a limited communication with the spirits, but not as well as I could when I was a kid. But I digress. So the first thing that really happened was my sister. She said that she had seen a face in my parents' room, and we of course didn't believe her at all. The first real experience I had was during a thunderstorm. I had gotten up to use the washroom. After I had washed up and gone to head back to bed, I opened to the bathroom door directly across from my room, and there was a man standing in my doorway, in a suit with his face blacked out, like it was black mist covering his face. I got the silhouette of the man because I'm going to digest again here. It was super cliche. The lightning flashed outside, and that's when I saw him standing there. So I screamed, slammed the door, and hid in the washroom for a good 10 minutes. I peeked out and saw it as clear as the evening during the flashes. It ran hid under my blankets. After that experience, I was really scared, and I started noticing more activity. I kind of took me off guard because I was seeing these shadows darting back and forth over my closet. It's actually why almost 18 years later, I still cannot sleep with the closet open. I heard my name called a lot, and I always hated being in the basement. It almost felt like there was something darker down there. The cats always booking it up the stairs and hissing. My siblings and I would always take the time at least once a week to talk about what we heard and all the weird paranormal stuff that would happen. So we were sitting at the dining room table, talking, when we all turned and looked into the kitchen. As we all turned our heads, we saw a stack of red cups fly out of the cupboard. Now, before anyone asked, it was the force of someone shoving it. If it fell out, it would have had to hit the counter. But it flew out of the cupboard and hit our dog. It didn't hurt, unfortunately, just spooked him. I remember a big, bright flash of light in our laundry room. The room was dark, and then all of a sudden, it was completely light. So I assumed that the light had somehow turned on and blew up. I was about 8 or so. I went in to check to see what it was, but the light turned on fine, and it wasn't that bright. I had also seen an orb closer to when we were going to move. It just listed lazily in the spare room. As this only really covers until 2009,